There is a book, sitting quietly on the shelf of history, that has changed the lives of people who were broken, people who were lost, people who were standing at the edge of their own darkness, wondering if there was any light left worth walking toward, and the moment they opened its pages, something shifted inside them. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, the way sunrise works, the way a seed works, the way healing works, when it is real. That book is called The Pathway of Roses, and it was written by Christian D. Larson, a man who believed, with every single word he ever put to paper, that a human being is not a victim of circumstance, not a prisoner of the past, not a broken thing waiting to be fixed, but a living soul with an inner power so magnificent, so quietly available, so completely real, that the only reason most people never feel it is because nobody ever told them it was there. And today, we are going to walk through this book together, not in a rush, not in a list, but in the way a good friend tells you something important, leaning forward, looking you in the eye, speaking from a place that has nothing to gain and everything to give. Christian D. Larson was born in 1866, and he spent his entire life thinking about one question: why do some people rise and why do others stay stuck? Not because of money, not because of luck, not because of talent or family or education. He looked around and he saw people with every advantage who were miserable, and he saw people with almost nothing who were radiant with peace and purpose. He wanted to know why. And the answer he found, the answer he spent decades refining and writing about and sharing, was this: the difference is not outside a person. The difference is inside. It is in what a person believes about themselves, about life, about what is possible, and about the invisible forces that are always, always working either for them or against them, depending entirely on how they use their own mind. The Pathway of Roses is not just a self-help book, it is a spiritual map. It is a love letter to the human soul. It is a set of gentle, patient instructions for how to stop fighting life and start flowing with it, how to stop living at the surface and start drawing from the depths, how to stop being tossed around by every wave of circumstance and start standing on something solid enough to hold you through any storm. Larson begins by asking us to consider one fundamental thing: that there is a power within every human being, a force he calls the inner life, the divine presence, the higher self, the spirit, and he says it does not matter what name you give it. What matters is that you recognize it is there, because most people go through their entire lives completely unaware of it. They live on the outside of themselves. They react to the world. They chase after things they think will make them feel whole. They try to arrange their circumstances in a way that will finally bring them peace. And it never works, because the peace was never in the circumstances. It was always inside. It was always waiting. He tells us about a woman, and I want you to hold this story for a moment, because it is the kind of story that stays with you. She was not a famous woman. She was not wealthy. She had faced the kind of losses that would make most people close themselves off completely. She had lost a child. She had lost her health for a period of years. She had lost her sense of purpose, and yet, at the lowest point of her life, she came across a simple idea, not even a full philosophy, just one idea, that the quality of her inner world was something she had the power to choose, that no matter what was happening around her, she could turn her attention inward and find something steady, something calm, something that the world could not touch. She did not do this perfectly. She did not wake up one morning completely transformed. But she practiced. Day by day, she practiced turning her attention away from the noise of her circumstances and towards something quieter, something deeper inside herself. And slowly, the way that everything real happens slowly, her life began to change. Not because her circumstances changed first. Her circumstances changed because she changed. Her health improved. Her relationships softened. New opportunities appeared. She did not attract these things by wishing for them or chanting about them. She attracted them by becoming someone whose inner state was aligned with them, by becoming someone who was no longer broadcasting fear and desperation and resistance, but was instead radiating something steady, something open, something that life could actually pour itself into. This is the heartbeat of the pathway of roses. It beats on every page. Larson talks about the law of attraction long before that phrase became something people put on coffee mugs and Instagram posts, and he talks about it with a seriousness and a depth that most modern treatments completely miss. He is not saying that if you think happy thoughts, good things will fall from the sky. He is saying something far more demanding and far more beautiful than that. He is saying that the inner life of a human being is constantly creating the outer life of that human being. Not occasionally, not sometimes, always. The thoughts you hold, the feelings you cultivate, the beliefs you carry about yourself and about life, these things are not passive. They are active. They are creative forces. They are shaping your experience of reality in every single moment, whether you are aware of it or not. And because they are shaping your experience, whether you are aware or not, Larson says, becoming aware is the most important thing a person can do. Not awareness in the abstract sense, practical awareness, the kind that means you start to notice what is happening inside you. You start to notice when your thinking is pulling you toward bitterness, toward fear, toward the exhausting habit of seeing the worst in everything. And you start to notice, too, when your thinking is clear and open and expectant in a good way, the way a person feels on a morning when they wake up and something in them just knows it is going to be a good day. Larson says that second feeling is not random luck. It is evidence of alignment. It is evidence that your inner life and your outer life are moving in the same direction, and when that happens, things tend to go well. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you become capable of handling it with grace. And grace has a way of turning everything it touches into something better. He writes about prayer, and this is one of the most beautiful sections of the book, because he is not talking about prayer in the way most people were taught to think about it. He is not talking about begging. He is not talking about appealing to an authority that may or may not be listening. He is talking about prayer as a state of being, as a quality of consciousness. He says that true prayer is not something you do for 5 minutes before bed. True prayer is an orientation. It is the ongoing act of turning yourself toward the divine, the good, the true, the beautiful, not once in a while, but as a way of living. And when you pray this way, when your entire inner life becomes a kind of continuous opening toward the highest and the best, you become, he says, a channel. Something comes through you, something greater than what you could produce by sheer effort or willpower alone. Something that feels, when it is flowing, absolutely unmistakable. He speaks to us about the nature of love, and here is where Larson becomes almost impossibly tender, almost startling in his gentleness. He says that love is not simply an emotion. It is not the butterflies you feel in the early days of a romance, though those are real and beautiful in their own way. Love, in the deepest sense, is a force. It is the most powerful creative force in existence. And when a person lives from love, when they allow love to be the animating principle behind their actions, their decisions, their relationships, their work, something extraordinary happens. The world begins to respond differently to them. People are drawn to them. Opportunities find them. Even obstacles seem to soften in the presence of someone who is genuinely, deeply, quietly loving. And he is careful to point out that this kind of love does not require you to like everyone. It does not require you to pretend that difficulty does not exist, or that certain people do not frustrate you, or that certain situations are not genuinely hard. It simply requires that underneath all of that, you maintain a fundamental orientation of goodwill, a fundamental refusal to close your heart, a fundamental commitment to seeing the human being inside the difficult behavior, the soul inside the struggle. This is love as a spiritual practice, and Larson says it is the single most transformative practice available to any human being. He talks about thought, and this is the section of the book that people often find both the most challenging and the most liberating, because what he is essentially saying is that your thoughts are not your thoughts in the sense that you are their passive recipient. You are their creator. You are their architect. And the thoughts you allow to live in your mind, to grow and develop and take up residence there, these thoughts are building something. They are building your experience of life, your character, your capacity, your world. Every thought you think, Larson says, is a seed, and seeds grow. Every single one of them grows into something. The question is never whether your thoughts will produce results. The question is only what kind of results they will produce. This is not meant to make you anxious, watching every thought like a hawk, terrified of having a negative one. That kind of anxious self-monitoring is itself a form of negativity, a form of distrust in yourself and in life. What Larson is pointing toward is something more relaxed and more radical at the same time. He is pointing toward the gentle, persistent practice of consciously choosing where you direct your attention, of learning to let fear thoughts arise and pass without feeding them, of learning to cultivate, deliberately and patiently, thoughts of possibility, of trust, of gratitude, of strength, not because you are in denial about difficulty, but because you understand that where you place your attention grows stronger, and you want to grow the things worth growing. He gives us something practical here, something you can actually use. He talks about the habit of what he calls dwelling in the ideal. This does not mean fantasizing in a way that disconnects you from reality. It means holding in your mind the highest vision of what is possible for yourself, for your relationships, for your work, for your health, for the situations you are navigating. And he says, hold that vision not with strain, not with desperate wanting, but with a kind of quiet certainty, the certainty of a gardener who plants a seed and walks away, knowing without anxiety that something is growing underground, trusting the process that they cannot see. This idea of trust is everywhere in the pathway of roses. Trust is not naivety. Trust is not pretending that things cannot go wrong. Trust is the deep, settled conviction that life is fundamentally on your side, that even the difficult chapters have a purpose, that even the losses contain something, that even the times when everything seems to be falling apart, something else, something better, is being rearranged. Larson writes with such conviction about this that it is almost impossible to read him without feeling it yourself, at least a little. Without feeling that maybe, just maybe, you have been fighting life harder than you needed to, that maybe there is a different way, a softer way, a way that does not require you to exhaust yourself trying to control everything, but instead invites you to trust something larger than your own straining effort. And here, around this point in our time together, if you are finding value in this conversation, in this exploration of a book that has quietly changed thousands of lives, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to Audiobook Library. Every time you do that, it genuinely helps this channel to keep making content like this, to keep sharing the wisdom of books that deserve to be heard, and to reach more people who might need exactly what you are hearing today. It takes just a second, and it makes a real difference. Thank you, truly. Now, let us keep walking this pathway together, because there is still so much ahead. Larson writes with great care and great compassion about the subject of suffering. He does not dismiss it. He does not tell you to pretend it is not real or to simply think your way past it with forced positivity. He honors it. He says that suffering is real and that the pain of loss, of illness, of disappointment, of heartbreak is something that deserves to be felt, not suppressed, not bypassed, not rushed through. But he also says, and this is the crucial thing, that suffering becomes something entirely different depending on what you do with it, whether you let it close you down or open you up, whether you let it make you bitter or make you deeper, whether you use it as evidence that life is against you or as an invitation to discover resources inside yourself that you never knew were there. He tells another story, this time about a man who had spent the better part of a decade in what he described as a kind of inner prison, not a literal prison, a prison of his own making, a prison built out of resentment, out of old wounds that he had never allowed to heal, out of a story he kept telling himself about how he had been wronged, how life had treated him unfairly, how he deserved better than what he had been given. And the tragedy, as Larson describes it, is that this man was actually someone of tremendous gifts. He was intelligent, he was creative, he was capable of real warmth. But all of that was locked up behind the walls of his grievance. And until he was willing to let those walls come down, nothing could get in and nothing could get out. The turning point for this man, as Larson tells it, was not a dramatic revelation. It was not a bolt of lightning or a voice from the sky. It was a single quiet moment in which he sat still long enough to ask himself an honest question: what is holding on to this costing me? And when he really looked at the answer, when he stopped defending his right to be angry and simply looked at what the anger was actually doing to his life, he saw it clearly for the first time. It was costing him everything: his health, his relationships, his creativity, his joy, his future. Every single thing he actually wanted was being held hostage by his unwillingness to let go of something that had already happened and could not be changed. And so he let go. Not all at once, not without difficulty, not without some days when the old resentment came flooding back. But he let go a little more each day, and as he did, something remarkable happened. Not immediately in his outer circumstances, but immediately inside him. He felt lighter. He felt more space. He felt something he had not felt in years, which was the simple, uncomplicated experience of being present, of being alive, of being here, in this moment, without the weight of everything he had been dragging around. Larson uses this story to talk about one of the most important principles in the entire book, which is the principle of release. He says that so much of human suffering comes from holding on to what we think should have been different, holding on to who we think wronged us, holding on to the version of ourselves that we think we were supposed to become by now. And release, he says, is not giving up. Release is not defeat. Release is the most powerful act of trust available to a human being. It is the act of saying, I am done carrying this, and I am going to open my hands and let life do what life knows how to do. He brings this conversation naturally into the territory of forgiveness, and again, he approaches it with a nuance that most people miss. He does not say forgiveness is about excusing what happened. He does not say it means you have to become friends with someone who hurt you, or pretend the hurt was not real, or that the person who caused it was not responsible. He says forgiveness is first and foremost an act of self-preservation. It is the decision to stop allowing something that happened in the past to continue poisoning your present. It is the decision to take your energy back, to stop spending the precious, irreplaceable hours of your life maintaining a grievance that is only hurting you. And he goes further than this. He says that forgiveness, practiced deeply and genuinely, is actually a form of love. Not sentimental love, not love that pretends everything is fine, but the kind of love that recognizes the human being in front of you, even when that human being has behaved badly, even when they have caused real harm, and chooses to respond from the highest part of yourself rather than from the wound. This, Larson says, is not weakness. This is the most extraordinary strength a human being can develop. He talks about health, and this is remarkable for a book written at the turn of the 20th century, because what he says anticipates so much of what modern science and medicine have spent decades slowly confirming. He says that the body and the mind are not separate systems. They are a single, integrated, deeply interconnected whole. And the state of the mind, the quality of the thoughts, the emotional climate a person lives in day after day, these things have direct, measurable effects on the physical body. Chronic stress, chronic fear, chronic resentment, chronic sadness, these are not just emotional experiences, they are physiological events. They produce real changes in the body. They weaken the immune system, they disrupt sleep, they accelerate aging, they create the conditions in which illness takes root. And conversely, he says, a mind that is calm, a heart that is open, a spirit that is in alignment with something larger than the small daily drama of personal circumstance, these things are healing. Not as a replacement for medicine, not as a denial of physical reality, but as a support, a foundation, a kind of inner environment in which the body's own extraordinary healing capacities can do their work most effectively. He talks about beauty. He talks about it with a reverence that is almost old-fashioned and completely timeless. He says that one of the great overlooked spiritual practices is the simple act of allowing yourself to be moved by beauty. The beauty of the natural world, the beauty of music, the beauty of a child's laughter, the beauty of a piece of writing or art or architecture that makes something inside you stop and go quiet. He says this stopping, this going quiet, this allowing beauty to land, is not a trivial thing. It is actually a form of prayer. It is a form of opening. It is a way of reminding the soul of what it already knows, that the world is more extraordinary than our ordinary habit of moving through it allows us to see. And he makes a point here that I find particularly beautiful and particularly important. He says that people who have the habit of noticing beauty tend to find more of it. Not because the world gives them more beauty than it gives anyone else, but because they have trained themselves to see it. They have cultivated the inner quality of attention that makes them sensitive to it, that makes them stop at the right moment, that makes them capable of being genuinely delighted by things that other people walk past without noticing. And this capacity for delight, he says, is one of the most important qualities a person can develop, because a person who can be genuinely delighted by life is a person who will never be truly poor. They will always have access to something that money cannot buy and circumstance cannot take away. He writes about work, about vocation, about the question of what we are here to do. And this is a section that speaks to something very deep in a lot of people, because so many of us have this quiet, persistent sense that we are capable of more than we are currently expressing. That there is something we are meant to do, something we are built for, something that would make our time here feel not just productive, but genuinely meaningful. Larson says, this sense is not an illusion. It is not ego, it is not wishful thinking, it is the soul's way of pointing you toward what it came here to do. He is careful not to be prescriptive about what that looks like. He does not say everyone is meant to be an artist or a healer or a visionary. He says that meaningful work is simply work that is done with your full presence, your genuine care, your honest investment of attention and effort. A parent who raises their children with this quality of attention is doing meaningful work. A gardener who tends their garden with this quality of presence is doing meaningful work. A teacher, a craftsman, a neighbour who shows up consistently and kindly for the people around them, these people are living meaningful lives, regardless of whether the world ever puts their names on anything. But he also says, with great compassion, that when there is a deep calling in a person, a specific pull toward a particular kind of expression or creation or contribution, that calling deserves to be taken seriously. Not necessarily at the expense of everything else in life, not recklessly, but with respect, with a willingness to invest in it, to develop it, to give it the time and attention and faith that a living thing needs in order to grow. He says that too many people silence this calling because they are afraid of failure, or afraid of what other people will think, or afraid of the uncertainty that comes with stepping towards something that is not guaranteed. And in silencing it, he says gently, they silence a part of themselves that would have enriched not just their own life, but the lives of everyone around them. He comes back again and again to the concept of the inner life as the source of everything. And I want to stay with this for a moment, because it is the idea that everything else in the book hangs on. The inner life, as Larson describes it, is not just your thoughts and emotions, it is something deeper. It is the place inside you where you are always already whole, where you are always already connected to something larger than yourself, where you are always already, beneath all the noise and worry and striving, at peace. He calls it by different names in different sections of the book: the spirit, the soul, the divine nature, the higher self. But what he means is always the same. There is a part of you that has never been broken. There is a part of you that no circumstance has ever touched. There is a part of you that is, and always has been, and always will be, completely whole. And the entire practice he is describing, the entire pathway he is laying out, is essentially the practice of finding your way back to that part, of living from it more and more consistently, of making the choices, day by day and thought by thought and moment by moment, that bring you into closer alignment with that deepest part of yourself. Because when you live from there, everything changes. Not necessarily your circumstances, though those often change too, but the quality of your experience, the texture of your days, the depth of your relationships, the peace you carry in your body, the creativity that flows through you, the love you are able to give. All of it becomes richer, truer, more real. He writes about gratitude, and here he is not simply telling you to be grateful because it feels good, though it does. He is making a deeper claim. He is saying that gratitude is a form of perception, a way of seeing, and the person who has developed genuine gratitude, not the forced, performative variety, but the real thing, the thing that arises naturally when you stop and actually look at your life, at the miracle of your own existence, at the improbable gift of being alive and conscious and here at all, that person has access to a quality of experience that most people are searching for in all the wrong places. He says that you can be grateful for difficulty, not in a masochistic way, not by pretending difficulty is not difficult, but in the way that a person who has come through something genuinely hard and discovered something real about themselves can look back on that time and feel, alongside the pain of it, a strange and genuine thankfulness. Because it made them who they are, because it opened something in them that comfort might never have opened, because it showed them a strength they did not know they had, or a kindness in another person they might never have known they needed, or a clarity about what actually matters that they might never have found in easier times. This is not a comfortable teaching, it is an honest one, and in the honesty of it, it is actually more comforting than any amount of reassurance that everything will be easy, because it means that nothing is wasted. Not the hard chapters, not the painful years, not the seasons when everything seemed to be going wrong. None of it is wasted. All of it, if you are willing to stay open, if you are willing to keep looking for what it is trying to give you rather than only what it is taking away, all of it becomes part of the pathway. Larson talks about the relationship between the individual and what he calls the infinite. This is the most explicitly spiritual part of the book, and he writes it with a kind of reverence and humility that makes it land very differently than dogma. He is not telling you what to believe. He is pointing toward an experience, the experience of feeling, even briefly, even fleetingly, that you are not alone in the universe, that you are not a separate, isolated fragment of consciousness trying to make sense of a confusing and indifferent world, that you are, in some fundamental way that goes beyond language and logic, connected to life, to the living world, to whatever it is that makes the sun rise and the seasons turn, and the human heart capable of love so extraordinary it can sometimes barely stand it. He says this experience of connection is available to every human being, regardless of their religious background or lack thereof, regardless of their circumstances, regardless of how lost or broken or far from anything holy they might feel. It is available because it is not outside them, it is inside them. It always was. And the pathway of roses, the pathway this book describes, is the pathway back to that experience. Back to the sense of connection, of meaning, of being held by something larger than the small and anxious self that we all, at some point, confuse for everything we are. There is a chapter in the book where Larson addresses what he calls the problem of personal power, and this is one of the places where his thinking is most distinctive and most counter to what most people have been taught. Most people think of power as something external, the power of money, of status, of position, of physical strength, of influence over other people. And Larson says, with great gentleness, that this kind of power is real, but it is not the thing worth pursuing, because it is completely dependent on circumstances that can change. You can have all of those things and still feel completely powerless inside. And conversely, you can have almost none of those things and feel, inside, completely grounded and capable and free. The personal power he is talking about is the power of a person who knows themselves, who trusts themselves, who has done the work of going inward and finding what is real there, who has developed a relationship with their own soul that is stable enough to hold them through difficulty and clear enough to guide them through confusion. This is the power that cannot be taken away. This is the power that grows stronger, not weaker, when life gets hard. And it is available, he says with complete conviction, to every single human being who is willing to turn their attention inward and begin the work. He writes about the pathway of roses in its most literal sense, and it is a beautiful image. A pathway lined with roses implies something lovely, something fragrant, something that requires care and attention to grow, but that rewards that care with extraordinary beauty. He is not saying the path of a good life is without thorns. Roses have thorns. He knows this. He has never pretended otherwise. What he is saying is that the thorns do not negate the beauty, that you can walk a path that is beautiful even when it hurts, that beauty and difficulty are not opposites, that a life fully lived, a life open to love and growth and genuine presence, will contain both and will be richer for containing both than any life lived behind walls built to keep the difficulty out. He talks about what he calls the science of the soul, and by this he means something very practical. He means the careful, attentive observation of your own inner life, the practice of noticing what makes you expand and what makes you contract, what thoughts and attitudes and beliefs bring you toward life and which ones pull you away from it, what relationships and environments and habits fill you and which ones deplete you, and then, with that information, making the adjustments, not in a harsh or self-critical way, but in the gentle, curious way of a scientist who is actually interested in what they are studying, actually interested in themselves, actually willing to learn. This, he says, is how a human being grows, not through dramatic transformation or sudden enlightenment, but through this patient, ongoing, compassionate attention to the inner life, through this willingness to keep turning toward the light, even when the pull of old habits and old fears is strong, through this commitment to treating yourself, your own soul, your own inner experience, with the kind of respect and care that you would offer to anything precious, anything living, anything worth growing. He closes the book, as he opens it, with a fundamental statement of faith, not religious faith in any dogmatic sense, but faith in the human being, faith in the capacity of ordinary people to do extraordinary things with their inner lives, faith in the power of love to transform circumstances that force could never touch. Faith in the quiet, persistent work of turning toward the good, toward the true, toward the beautiful, day after day, even when nothing seems to be changing, because something is always changing. Something is always growing. Something is always moving in the direction of what you are consistently turning toward. He says the pathway is open. He says it has always been open. He says there is no one who has strayed too far, no one who has fallen too many times, no one whose mistakes have been too large or whose darkness has been too deep for them to turn around and begin again. The pathway is patient. It has been waiting, and it is lined all the way to the horizon with the most extraordinary beauty if you are willing to walk it with your eyes open. There is something that happens when you spend real time with this book, something that is difficult to describe but very easy to feel. It is as though something inside you that had been clenched, some fist of worry or doubt or fear that had been holding on for so long you had stopped noticing it was there, begins very slowly to open. And in the opening you breathe a little easier, you feel a little lighter. You see, perhaps for the first time in a long time, or perhaps for the first time ever, that the life you want is not somewhere far away and difficult to reach. It is here, it is now. It is a single, quiet, honest step inward from where you are standing. Christian D. Larson wrote The Pathway of Roses as a gift, as a labour of love, as an act of genuine faith in the people who would one day read it. He could not have known who you are. He could not have known what you are carrying today, what questions you are sitting with, what hopes you are trying not to let go of. But in some way that is beyond the logic of time and circumstance, this book was written for you, for this moment, for exactly where you are. Take what resonates. Leave what does not. But take something. Carry it with you into your day, into your week, into the quiet moments when you are alone with yourself and the question of who you are and what this life is for arises the way it always does, the way it does for every human being who is truly awake. The pathway is open. It always has been. Walk it. If this summary touched something in you, if it gave you something to think about or something to feel, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Audiobook Library. Every like, every subscription tells us that this kind of content matters to you, and it helps us reach more people who are out there right now, maybe in their car, maybe at the end of a long and difficult day, looking for exactly what you just found here. Your support genuinely keeps this channel alive and growing, and we are grateful for every single one of you who chooses to be part of it. And while you are here, please take a look at our other videos. We have a whole library of book summaries like this one, each one chosen because it has something real to offer, something worth your time, something that might, if the moment is right, change something in you the way the Pathway of Roses has changed things in so many people over so many years. Every video is made with the same care and the same genuine belief that ideas matter, that books matter, that the inner life of a human being is the most important territory in the world, and that spending time here, in this kind of reflection, is never wasted. Thank you for walking this pathway with us today. We will see you in the next one.